See, today we have Jemille Q. Duncan, who has worked in government and politics since he was 14 years old. He's been quoted and featured in most sought-after publications around the world. Jemille has worked on legislation and policies for Pennsylvania state senators and countless political people. Let's speak with the policy expert columnist himself. Let's give a warm We Talk Weekly welcome to Jemille Duncan.
There we go. Let's give him a round of applause. So how are you, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming to the show. Let's talk a little bit about your work. I mean, I love the fact that you're a columnist and you've really been putting out a lot of information, good information. You're doing your due diligence as a journalist, right? And so what encouraged you or inspired you to continue to do that work?
Definitely. So I started writing after I left Senator Shreve Street's office. And at that time, I was still 14. I was initially only supposed to stay there as like a summer internship. Sure. Thinking it was over, I was like, dang, I really enjoy writing about policy. And so I'll start doing it for the public. And, you know, a few months later, he asked me to come back, and I ended up working for him for 3 years. Right. But even then, I was like, I'm enjoying writing. So I always did it in addition to my policy work. And so that was sort of my motivation for it, just sort of as expressing my opinions on all kinds of issues that people are thinking about, sort of helping the public think about them in different ways.
Yeah. I love the idea that you kind of you play this intersection of what people are thinking right. versus what possibly is the narrative. And I love that you do that because you're giving more than just kind of one side as you
right.
do your writing. So I appreciate that you're doing that. When you saw David O just walk out, and you know that there's a lot of people running as candidates for mayor. Right. You know, what are your thoughts on, one, what would be the best mayor for Philadelphia, right? Best candidate for Philadelphia. But also, what do you think we need as Philadelphians to have that particular person take a leadership position?
Right. So I think we need leadership that is very strong on crime. No matter how you look at it, Philadelphians are sick of the crime issue. Yeah, and I've written about that ad nauseum at this point. Just about every other journalist has as well. And so we need a leader focused on crime. We need a leader focused on education and quality of life issues. Something I didn't understand until I got to council was just the gravity of quality of life issues for people. You know, I got there coming from the Senate where we talked about things like criminal justice reform, abortion rights, gun violence, and things, gun regulation, and things of that sort. And then I got to council, and we're talking about trash pickup and things like that. It's a very different set of issues that is not a very sexy topic. Yeah, but sure. When you think about it, as I did when I first got to council, these are the things that people are talking about at their kitchen tables. They're like, eating with their families, thinking about the issues that sort of plague their lives, and it is how hard it was to find parking, why it is that trash hasn't been picked up on their block for a week, why it is that Parks and Recs isn't well funded, and that their local recreation center is underfunded and in disrepair. And so it is those sort of quality of life issues that our next leader will have to champion. And so I'll just use this opportunity as a short plug.
Sure. No,
next month, April 20th at 6 p.m. at the Museum of the Museum of the American Revolution. I'll be a moderator for the PABJ's mayoral debate. That's right. And so I'm proud to be doing that. Yuki Washington will be a moderator as well. Jameer Pyrie, and Archbishop Mary Floyd.
Nice.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we're actually going to be there. We're going to cover that. We're going to be there doing some streams. So shout out to PABJ.
Yeah, and Ernest Owens, who will be hosting it.
That's right. And so,
I was just going to ask before we continue. When I did your bio, it's policy expert columnist. Can you tell people what that entails?
Sure. So currently I am Senior Policy Advisor to Councilmember Anthony Phillips. And in that position, I help advise him on legislation and help craft this legislation. He recently introduced a bill allowing citywide speed calming measures to be put in the vicinity of schools. That was the first thing I wrote for him. And so doing things like that for the council member, and I've done that for Councilmember Cindy Bass when I was her legislative director, former Councilmember Bobby Heenan, and before him, State Senator Shreve Street. So writing legislation, that's where the policy expert piece comes in. Now, as for columnist, I've written for the Inquirer. Now, the home of most of my writing is with the Philadelphia Citizen, City and State PA, and other outlets like the Teen Magazine and such. And so that's policy expert and columnist.
Nice. Thank you.
No doubt. So when you think of, just the community in general, right? There has been a recent, and Sizzle, you might want to pull this up, but it has been a recent poll that was put out by Linfest that talked a lot about just the sentiments of the community and the community feeling as if the
city is headed in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's headed in the wrong direction.
I believe it was 69%.
Right,
or something
right.
like that.
And that's pretty high, for the community to feel like, they just don't get it, right?
Right.
Where do you think they're missing a mark, and why do you think the citizens are feeling this way?
I think citizens feel this way because they're seeing a Mayor Kitty who has a complete lack of innovation and drive to really champion the issues I mentioned before: education, crime, public safety. And so I think that sort of polling data is a response to that. We need a mayor who is going to implement the legislation that council passes. We appropriate a lot of funds every year, and next week is the beginning of budget hearings, and so we're going to appropriate more funds. We're more likely to a variety of projects. After those funds are appropriated, and I've written about this in the Inquirer, the mayor then has to act on the appropriations and and implement and enforce the programs that council is funding. Without that implementation and enforcement, the money really means nothing. Unfortunately, because the way the city charter, which is like the city's constitution, is written, council can't force the mayor to do anything. Right. And so we need a mayor who's going to be on board with the council and the will of the people expressed to the council.
Right. Do you have any I guess top candidates that you're feeling that may get it? Not necessarily who you endorsing, because I don't want to put you on the spot for that. But are there any that you feel like, oh, they kind of get it? I like what they're talking about. This one kind of gets it also, because I do want to allow you room, and this is a safe space because this conversation wasn't that. So is it any candidates that you feel like they kind of get it? They're on the mark? So
I think most of the candidates running understand the gravity of these issues. Right. Now, as to whether how serious they are about tackling them, that's where the meat and potatoes of these mayoral forums and the election will be. Now, I'm going to hold off on saying exactly who I think are championing those issues correctly.
Yeah, for sure. I did ask David O a question. I asked a couple other candidates a question as they came on here, and I want to know what your thought is. Literally, about, I think, 8 people resigned from city council.
Right.
I could be wrong. I think it's 8, though.
I think it is.
8. Why don't you believe, or why do you think they couldn't just sit down in the back office and say, look, you're the better candidate? Like, why don't you run and we'll support you instead of me resigning and kind of running? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, politicians are known for their egos. It takes a sort of
First real answer.
I know.
It takes a sort of arrogance, to have the confidence in the first place to run for office. And that's amplified when you've been in council for a while, and you have this a different self-image than you had when you first got there. And so I think that comes with the unfortunate reality that you're going to have a bunch of people who, all think of themselves pretty highly, sort of jumping at the bits, tripping over each other to run for this office that is just realistic that obviously not all of them can win.
Right.
And I think it's really unfortunate because I think, I'm not going to say which candidates, but I think some of them were better off in council.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
they were fantastic council members. I don't think some of them necessarily make sense as mayoral candidates, but that's just me.
And
So-
that makes it. Go ahead, Cecil.
I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to comment what C said, that it does make sense. It's not even saying that you're a better candidate. It's, hey, I feel as though we're all on the same mission,
that's right.
that we want to go ahead and not split the votes and allow you, we're going to back you up, and then we're going to sit back here and still have this seat so that we can amplify what our mission is to
right.
execute. So
right.
that you made a great point with that.
Yeah. You want to address that?
No, I concur completely. Not everyone is meant for every position, and that takes a bit of humility to recognize in yourself, and that's not a quality that usually marks a politician, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a
So where do you see the direction of city council going anyway now at this point when you've had the goats of leadership
Yeah.
on city council all throwing their hats in for the mayoral
Yeah, so
as a mayoral
the
candidate?
Inquirer earlier this week ran a headline, and I think it was to the effect of council is like the most inexperienced it's been in the past 40 years.
I saw that.
Which I thought was interesting. And that's definitely true. They're all younger, but I think that's definitely for the better. I think we need younger, more innovative ideators in council, and I think we've seen that pay off with, for example, my shameless plug, my boss Anthony Phillips of the 9th District,
No doubt.
Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson,
Yeah.
Councilmember Isaiah Thomas,
right.
who were two of the youngest before Councilmember Anthony Phillips got on, and they're just killing it. And I think if you add more young people to the mix, you're going to see better results for the city, and I think they'll be able to better address some of the issues our city is facing. And so I think that's the direction council is going. I think we're going in a younger direction, and I think that's for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw with Councilman Isaiah Thomas, we saw the drive an equity bill.
Yeah.
And that was just huge.
Yeah.
And even from that, other cities are trying to mimic that, legislation
Right.
so that they can pass it in their city. So that's tremendous.
Yeah,
And
trend
Jemille-
setting.
And Jemille, I see your future ahead as far as policy expert. What do you see in regards to running for mayor for yourself in the coming years? Not knowing how long those years will be, but
Right.
I could hear it within your conversation tonight that your future is extremely bright.
Thank you. To many's disappointment, I do not see being a politician in my future.
No.
I
Okay.
think when Stephanie Farr, reporter from the Inquirer, when she did a feature on me, she asked me the question, like, do you want to run for office? I think I said something like, oh, no, don't wish that stress on my life. Because I've seen it up close, and I don't want it.
Yeah.
I like sort of being behind the scenes and just impacting Philadelphians in a different way.
Yeah. The last question I have about that is on this topic is the young voter, right? And you reflect that. You have a reflection of the younger generation, younger voter. What do you think is missing, or the challenge between like an older demographic? Where's that bridge? Because I see a lot of infighting in that also. We have, an older generation wanting to keep it and saying like, you guys don't have the experience, but then you have the younger, oh, y'all too old, you don't get where we're coming from, So how can we bridge that gap between, from the baby boomers to the millennials to the Generation Zs? How can we bridge this gap of saying that we're all in the community together? This is what is needed to make things happen.
Right, and so I think, it'll take a degree of humility, obviously from both parties. Right, but like I said before, that's not necessarily characteristic of politicians. Yeah, but I will say we have had some great examples of that in council. So just in last council session, Councilmember Alan Dom initially introduced a tax cut, one that was historic because I think at the time we hadn't cut that particular tax since the 80s, since before some of the council members who are now there were born. And so he originally introduced it. He got a call from a stakeholder saying, you need to give that bill to someone else. He's very fond of telling these stories at mayoral forums these days. And he goes, he stepped back, he thought about it, and he was like, you know what, they're right. I'm not the person to champion this issue, even though his office, did all the legwork and things like that. Doing government well isn't necessarily about that. It's about compromise and getting results. If you're concerned about the credit, then you won't get much done. And so what he did was he gave part of the bill to Councilmember Thomas to pass, and the other part to Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson to pass. And what it became was a beautiful marriage of sort of intergenerational cooperation within council that led to it being passed and embraced by the business community. Wow. And so I think if we could just all come to the table, humble ourselves, and sort of depersonalize the issues, become a little bit disinterested, don't make it personal, and just focus on getting the issues right as opposed to egos and credit and things of that sort. And so I think that's how the older and younger generations move forward with that example of council members, former council member Alan Dom and current council members Isaiah Thomas and Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Yeah, fantastic. Yep.
So you mentioned Alan Dom, and Alan Dom is now everybody's campaigning, and some people are ramping up their campaigns and things that they're doing. Alan Dom is running a commercial that shows our current mayor saying that, and this was nationwide news, unfortunately, because of the shooting during the Welcome America, the WHYY, that concert that they had. And, you see the mayor, he's out, and he's I don't know why somebody didn't tell him not to do any press. But they're like, he's saying like, yeah, I can't wait to get out of office or whatever. Do you think that caused like a lot of people to just say like, hey, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring because, obviously the mayor is just over being the mayor?
Well, the truth about that is Philadelphia political insiders already knew he didn't want the job. When he got on camera and said that just gave them an excuse to cudgel him about it publicly. And so, when I saw some of the public backlash he was getting from other politicians, I mean, I thought it was a little opportunistic because I think I thought, like, if you look at what he's saying, he's like, the job's very stressful, and he looks forward to, just being able to be himself, which I understand. I'd feel that way if I had that job as well, which is why I don't want to be a politician. But, he is the mayor, and I don't think that was the thing for him to say to the public. That's not how you, boost the public spirit about your being mayor by saying you look forward to not being mayor. That's just bad PR. But as for the outrage that other politicians showed, I think it was just manufactured and opportunistic of them because they already knew. If I knew, they definitely knew.
Just like anything else, you always have to look at the context in which something is being said.
Right.
Sorry. Because think of the moment that happened. Everything that had just happened, he was frustrated. He was angry. He's like, I'm tired of seeing this over and over again. Yeah. It was a moment where he was very passionate and very human.
Right.
Very human about his job. And it's probably like, I'm tired of seeing this. Yeah. And you got to think about it. Just like, think about it as a parent. And it's like, I can't leave y'all alone for 2 seconds. As soon as I turn my back, y'all tearing something up. It's like, I can't even go on vacation. I can't even go nowhere. Because as soon as I attempt to do anything with my family, I got to get called back here because you can't act right. It's like one of those things. I felt everybody's perspective around it, but I also feel like he was having a moment,
Yeah.
and he was passionate in that moment.
Yeah, you just can't
So
have those moments.
You can't
on
have those
television.
moments on TV. You can't, it's like, where's his PR?
Oh man, I felt so bad for him because I really thought that. I'm like, oh, they just grabbed him from wherever he might have been doing something,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
like,
It's a holiday, you know.
yeah, and here this is, and that made like national news, and there people were just, oh, the city is falling apart, and the mayor's tired of being the mayor, and it was
Oh,
just-
that's how everybody looked at it. Like, he don't even want to be there. Why should we want to be there?
Yeah.
So, Jemille, do you feel that Philadelphia is going to get better, as regarding, even with the generation, of the younger people? Do you feel that, Philadelphia is going to be that place that people want to come and visit?
Right. So I think it depends on, this next election and, elections in the future, and really how we invest in solving this public safety issue with gun violence. We need to, tackle these issues seriously, and, depending on how seriously we handle the issues before us, whether we are, timid about being assertive about the sort of crimes that are going on, or not. It just depends on leadership style. Depending on how these issues are approached, in short, will, I think, determine the future of our city, which is why this upcoming election is so important. I encourage everyone to vote.
There you go. I appreciate you saying that.
I'm sorry. How do the older politicians connect with the younger ones? Because now you have the ones that are like, we don't want Biden in because he's so old or whatever. Like, what can they do to connect with?
Yeah, so I think, well, the first part of your question, how do they connect with them? It's like the older politicians will address the young ones like hey baby or hey nephew, that sort of thing, and that's like the caliber of their relationship. And the younger ones, I'm pretty sure don't like it. I know I wouldn't like it. I don't let people address me that way. But there's a level of collegiality you have to keep, and so you're not going to be like, hey, don't talk to me that way, because you still need to work with them. And so like that's the dynamic of their relationship, like big sister, little sister, big brother, younger brother type of relationship. Now, how should they operate moving forward? Definitely not like that. They should, treat each other as equals. Each of them have, one vote in their respective legislature, whether it be Congress or the state Senate or the state House or the city council. All of them have one vote, and you should treat them, treat your younger colleagues like you're equals, because they're there for the same purpose, representing some of the same constituencies that you are, and I would, caution any older politician who's listening to this to just to bear that in mind.
No doubt. I really appreciate how you answer a lot of these questions, because you're definitely informed, and you're able to give a perspective that is twofold. One is understanding the young generation, the young voter, but also being around a lot of council are generally older, right? And so you're hearing them talking, you're hearing them politicizing everything, right? And so going through that motion, and even this not presidential, but this mayoral race. So you're hearing a lot of this. And so putting that in context, you're able to, put this in your dish of knowledge and be able to articulate what both sides are doing. So I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you keep doing what you're doing, my friend. Now, the reason why I actually brought you in, I know they kind of sidelined you with everything, right? And so, but right now we're part of the Every Voice, Every Vote initiative, and it's important for us to tackle a lot of the issues that surrounded the mayoral election and all of the candidates that's running. And so we'll be asking a lot of questions to everyone who comes here, right? Because, as you said, everyone has one vote.
Right.
All right. And so why I brought you, I want to talk a little bit about like your writing and what caught my attention, right? You did this actual literary piece on this editorial on, poverty is not fashion.
Right.
I loved it. I loved it so much that I had to reach out to you, right? As a seasoned image consultant and wardrobe stylist myself, I see a lot, and I see dynamics in fashion. I see trends in fashion, but lately I have seen the trend of, you know, dirty fashion, so to speak, right?
Right.
And it's hard for me to be critical in a field where style is exactly what you just kind of give it. That's your take. This is our take. So technically, when someone asks me, "Do you like something?" I have to preface that first, right? Because your decisions are your decisions, right? But if we're talking about image and where things are going in the context, you know, people make snap judgments for what they initially see, and they process this information by making snap judgments about the wearer, right? And so when you look at somebody, you're going to make a judgment. Oh, that looks dirty, right? That's the first thing that comes to us. Now, this particular piece, I want you to talk a little bit about what got you inspired to write this. And I want you to start with this quote that said, "Knowing very little bit about today's trends, I decided to check. Turns out Nordstrom does indeed sell dirty sneaks. They call Golden Goose, and Golden Goose is one of them, right? And they're not alone. So do Gucci and Balenciaga, which Balenciaga has a really dynamic line of..." We can have a conversation, right? Whose versions Vogue has described as looking like they survived an act of God. They also make Nordstrom $625 golden geese looking reasonably priced. So let's talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, definitely. So I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and I saw a video of this woman in a Nordstrom store, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, you know, these shoes are over $600. I was like, they were dirty. And so I Googled it because I don't believe anything I see on social media. And I'm like, these are real? And then like I am looking at other brands. I'm like, wait, they've made what kids get bullied for in public schools profitable. And that bothered me because, you know, I was a kid and I'm a product of Philadelphia public schools. I wore sneakers, you know, to school in middle school, in elementary school, and it was a big thing because, you know, those students may wear a uniform. The one area where they do get to express themselves and sort of tell a bit of their class and, you know, where they're from is their shoes. And, you know, if you come to school wearing fresh kicks or, you know, a new pair of shoes every day, that says something to other students about your status. If you come to school wearing the same shoes every day and you get a little beat up, a little worn, or if they're talking like we used to say, you know, that also says something about your status in your class. And it was that you're poor. And people got bullied for that all the time. And there was immense social pressure, you know, around that. I'm sure that that's still the case for you know, students in schools. And so for luxury companies, billion-dollar companies like Gucci and Nordstrom to be profiting off of that really bothered me. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you putting it in that particular context. And shout out to the Philadelphia Citizen.
Yes,
they've been putting out a lot of dynamic content. Appreciate them. But you know, to poverty. It I think what happens is, and we can have a longer discussion in another time because I want to bring you back to talk a little bit more about.
Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. But just a stronger or a more dynamic context of poverty as it relates to fashion and benefiting off of those who can't technically afford the fashion that you're selling. Right. And so that in that context, what do you think would be the I guess the sounding alarm, or what do you think the advocacy would be to you know, I don't want to say debate, but to push a little bit further against fashion that kind of glamorizes the ills or the L's of people that can't even afford some of this.
I think the people who, you know, have the capital to spend money to buy dirty shoes need to, well, A, read this column, and B, you know, sort of reflect on themselves. Just what am I doing, and what is the message I'm sending, and who we're really, and this is the way I see it. Everyone, the people who wear these shoes may not see it this way. Who are the people I'm mocking?
Yeah,
you know,
there we go.
These are kids. These are, you know, impoverished, under resourced communities and people who's you know, who face all kinds of social torment and pressure because of the shoes that you are choosing to wear. And so I think we need to inspire this sort of social introspection amongst the class of folks who buy these shoes. They need to reconsider what it is they're doing, because I think it sends the wrong message, and I think if they actually took some time to reflect on it, I think they'd come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, fantastic.
Crazy thing is, I always got some little wild thought, but I had to Google these sneakers, and I'm looking them up, and I'm thinking like, I just remember when you would be out if somebody stepped on your sneakers.
Oh,
that was a fight or something like that, or if you scuffed up your sneakers, you would throw them in the trash, or like if it had a scuff mark, and if this was popular back then, maybe some people wouldn't have gotten shot, beat up, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, still, just step on my white sneakers, it's a problem.
Yes.
And it's
a fight.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing that the people who buy these shoes, they just can't be thinking about. There's no way. I think if they were, thinking about these things, that they wouldn't buy them. They'd be like, oh, this is a little silly, which it is.
Fantastic. Well, I'll be looking to see if you're going to write more stories like this. I would implore you to do so. Start to have conversation based around this, because I think there's a lot of discussion based around something that's called fast fashion.
Yes.
That a lot of the mainstream designers push back against, but the fast fashion designers are not creating poverty look-alike sneakers and clothes, right? And so it's kind of like, oh, come on, what are you actually doing? What are you actually saying here? Yeah, for sure. So I thank you for coming to the show, my friend. We talk weeklies after the talk on WPPMLP, Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We talk weeklies after the talk with your boy Charles Gregory and the beautiful
Lauren Sizzle.
and the beautiful
Classy Lady Sparkle.
and the beautiful.
Lady Esther.
And why don't you tell everyone how they can get in contact with you, where they can find you, read more of your articles. You're fantastic, my friend. I'm gonna allow you space, and I'm gonna offer you anytime you want to come on the show to talk.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a platform. I like what you're doing, and you're great. Yeah.
Yeah, so my website is JemilleDuncan.com. That's JemilleDuncan.com. You can contact me there. My social media is JQ_Duncan, and on Instagram and Twitter, and on LinkedIn and Facebook, you can just type my name and you'll see me. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we got the sizzle, man. You already know how we get down. So don't go nowhere. We'll be right back after this, y'all.
Hey, this is Roxanne Shante, and your week cannot be complete unless you listen to or watch We Talk Weekly. Please believe me, baby.
I don't know.